Good morning. Good morning. Friday, August 23rd. It's the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast, and I am your host, Richie. On today's show, going to do a big run through on Major League Baseball as the season approaches the final 5 weeks. A lot of intensity, a lot of panicking going on with certain teams, and we had a manager fired as well. I'm going to speak on both New York teams picking up big victories yesterday. And I'm also going to hit on a common foe that manages to always find themselves where they need to be this time of the year. That, of course, would be the Houston Astros. We have an NFL trade going down in the NFC East. And I'm going to open up a question as to whether or not that particular trade is going to open the door for a particular 49er to come to the East Coast, DC particularly. We're going to start this up with the Seattle Mariners. Scott Servais, former player, fired after losing 8 of his last 9. And I do understand the move. Initially, I knew that they were sliding. I myself was not aware that it was 8 out of the last 9. This is a team that has had first place under wraps for a decent portion of the second half of the season. And you're talking about a division where the defending world champion Texas Rangers have battled injuries all year long and just have not been able to find their way. You're talking about the American League runner-up last year, the Houston Astros, who had a horrific first half of the season. And I guess what I'm ultimately getting at is this was the golden opportunity of pretty much any season for the Seattle Mariners to take advantage. They have struggled mightily offensively all year long, and it looks like this particular situation is going to end up with them not making the playoffs. Because when you think about the American League and that there's a dogfight going on in the East between the Orioles and Yankees, who are both going to be going to the postseason, you've got the Twins and the Guardians. The winner of that division will be one of those two, and the second place team or third place team will be a playoff team, because you also have to account for the Kansas City Royals, who are also going to make it. So the point I'm getting at is in the West, there was really only one spot open. And with the Mariners falling 5.5 back and the Astros are surging, it just looks like yet another year for Mariners fans to wait. They have never won a World Series, one of a few teams that has never had that distinction. And it's not going to happen this year. And they've got some tough decisions to make in the offseason, because when you look at that team and you look at the pitching that they've had all year, this is very disappointing, and it does fall on the lack of offensive firepower. We're going to move it along to their division rival, the Houston Astros, completely coming all the way back after a horrible first half of the year, and they now have a 5.5 game lead, as I already alluded to. Now, mind you, this is a team where Dusty Baker hung it up last year, so naturally most of us said this is going to be an off year for the Astros. But lo and behold, they find themselves exactly where they need to be yet again, and I just have to praise this roster, praise this organization. As much as I don't like this team, they constantly always find a way to be where they need to be. And it comes down to doing the little things. But this Astros team is going to be a tough out for pretty much anyone in this particular postseason. And yes, they're going to win the West. New York Mets picking up a huge 8-3 win in Petco Park over the Padres to keep pace in the National League wildcard race. They are currently a game and a half behind the Atlanta Braves, 2 in the loss column. And I got to say, this Mets team just doesn't go away. I've said it going back to probably a month ago now, but when Francisco Alvarez was reinserted into that lineup, the offense and the superstars in that lineup started to take off. But this is a Mets team, in my estimation, that is going to be in it until the last week of the season. And for Met fans, I would have to say that anything less than at least a playoff appearance would be a little unacceptable, when you consider that the Atlanta Braves are missing Spencer Strider as well as Ronald Acuna Jr. And you've got to give the Braves credit because the Braves just won a series against division-leading Philly. But we're going to see how this plays out. I think the Mets have a very good chance of making the postseason. And, after looking at the last couple of years and some of the futility in Queens, it'll be very welcomed by their fan base. Going to move it along here to my New York Yankees. Garrett Cole dancing around 5 walks, and the Yankees were able to one-hit the Guardians, take the series 2-1. Aaron Judge hitting number 48 as he continues to chase his American League home run record of 62. The Yankees also receive help from an unlikely source as the Houston Astros defeated the Baltimore Orioles. Game and a half lead over the Orioles right now for the Yankees. And this is a point in the schedule where the Yankees have to strike. You're playing the worst team in the National League in the form of the Colorado Rockies. Then you have a 3-game trip to the nation's capital to take on the Washington Nationals. I understand that at this level, it's never a guarantee that you're going to sweep somebody just because they're an inferior team. But anything less than 5 out of 6 against these two teams would be unacceptable. The Yankees have everything right in front of them, right where they want it. And I got to say something. I watched game 1 of this series against the Cleveland Guardians, a game that was beyond frustrating, where the Yankees had multiple chances to win the game in extras and, scenarios where you have 1 out, a man on third. You just need that base hit and you're going home and walking it off. The bigger part of that, besides the frustration with the bats, is that the Yankees completely used up their bullpen. But when you consider that over the last 2 days, Nestor Cortez and Garrett Cole gave you enough to preserve the better parts of your bullpen, it was a great response. Because I must admit, after watching game 1 and seeing how the bullpen was just bled out, I had a bad vibe that the Yankees may have very well been swept. They had a great response. This should have been a sweep for the Yankees, but taking 2 out of 3 against one of the best teams in Major League Baseball and a team that undeniably has the best bullpen in baseball, that is something to definitely feel good about. And if the Yankees take care of business in the next week or so, I think they can finally get some serious distance between them and the Orioles, because the Astros are playing great ball right now, and they walloped the Orioles last night. So, it's a game at a time, this juncture of the year. You don't want to think too much into any one particular thing. You just got to stick to your plan and just continue to play ball. But right now, the New York Yankees are in a phenomenal position. And I believe that Aaron Judge, right now, he's on pace for 60 home runs. I think that he's going to possibly tie that record. But the way that the man hits home runs and they come in bunches, it's hard to really look at his pace now and try to figure it out and math it out, because this man has basically been on fire since having a rough April. He even has a shot at the Triple Crown as Bobby Witt Jr. leads him, I think, by about 15 points in the batting title race. But Judge has been nothing short of phenomenal. And I think he's done his due diligence to make Juan Soto want to be a career Yankee. Juan Soto, as many of you know, was traded for going into this new season, and he has a big payday coming. When I think about the logistics financially of who can afford a Juan Soto, the only team that I see as true competition would be the New York Mets and the Los Angeles Dodgers. I would X off the Mets as a true threat to steal him from the Yankees because, quite frankly, I don't think that Soto would be going to a better organization. But with the Los Angeles Dodgers, that's a completely different animal because they have the best team on paper every year. World Series and championships and such are not won on paper, but they have limitless pockets. So if somebody was going to steal Juan Soto and prevent him from coming back to the Yankees, that would be the team. And speaking of those Dodgers, Jason Hayward was released, DFA'd. And while he's a fraction of the player he used to be, the real reason why this happened is because they just have so much talent and they have a real logjam at figuring out who's going to make that main roster. But I do have a feeling that somebody will pick him up for this stretch run going into the playoffs. I have a feeling he's going to land on another playoff hopeful team. Moving it along to the NFL, got to give a rival some credit here. Howie Roseman does it again. The Eagles score Jahan Dotson and add yet another talented receiver to this receiving room, joining Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. Now you have Jahan Dotson, not to mention their newly drafted rookie, Johnny Wilson, out of the university, out of Florida State University. And you also have Paris Campbell over there. This is a very, very talented, deep Eagles wide receiving corps. As the Commanders go, they are under new management. I believe that on paper, the Commanders have made a lot of quality moves right now and should be a surprise team. They have the makeup to be a potentially surprise team in the NFC East. I did pick them to only go 7-10 this year. However, I think they are trending in the right direction. But the difference between being a 10-win team and a 7-win team sometimes is only a handful of plays. Dan Quinn gradually putting that team together. They have some star power there. In my opinion, they drafted the best rookie of the available options. I don't think the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, is better than Jaden Daniels. That will remain to be seen. But things are looking bright for the Washington Commanders. And I beg to question, with this trade going down, is this a possibility? Will Philly and Washington's trade open up the door for the Commanders to get back in on Brandon Ayuk? I'm going to say this. This has been a saga going on all offseason, and I think all fans are getting to the point that they're kind of tired of a little bit of all of it. But, the 49ers stand in a situation where this is a man that might not suit up for week 1. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I have a feeling that given the situation that the Commanders are in and how they are really trying to sell to their fan base, that they are going all in on the rebuild and trying to get as far away from the bad memories that Dan Snyder made, I would not be the least bit surprised if they make this deal and give Ayuk the contract that the 49ers are most likely not going to give him. It's a difficult thing for the 49ers to offer Ayuk this kind of contract because you have to worry about other players from a salary level. You got Brock Purdy eventually who's going to get paid handsomely. Can you put Ayuk over Deebo Samuel when Deebo is more versatile? You have the defensive side of the ball where you have a lot of superstars that are either on big contracts or going to elevate their contract worth. You have the best running back in professional football in Christian McCaffrey. It's a star-studded roster, and it's not easy to pay everybody. And I don't have anything against Brandon Ayuk, but I do believe that that ultimately works against him when wanting to get his, so to speak. It will be interesting. You got to also account for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They also may very well be in on Brandon Ayuk. And we're going to be releasing our North preview soon. We did it just 2 nights ago. We had to do it late, so we didn't go live on that. But, we kind of voiced our opinions on what Pittsburgh looks like with and without Ayuk. And with Ayuk, it definitely elevates their chances of going even further this particular year. So Brandon Ayuk is a story that just seems that it will never go away. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how it goes. NFL is right around the corner. We've been having a blast doing these preview shows. So, keep an eye out for them. We have 2 divisions left to finish, 3 left to air. The North of the AFC will be arriving soon. And I must admit, although I am an NFC East guy and a Giants fan, I truly enjoyed doing that show the other night with Mike Zappi. We released it yesterday, the NFC North Green Bay Packers. Always a great sense of pride that I take in covering that division. My late father was the biggest Packer diehard you would ever want to meet. This was his favorite time of the year. And, just a different set of inspiration and pride knowing that, I'm doing my best to bring great content. And I do believe that my father would be proud of his Packers right now. They got quite the roster. We're going to go back to Aaron Judge for a second here. Staten Island coach, his Little League World Series hopefuls, versus the Yankees' Aaron Judge. As many of you know, the New York Yankees and Detroit Tigers played in Williamsport, PA, in that iconic field. And it was all about the kids. It was all about the participants of the Little League World Series. While there's much evidence that Aaron Judge was visible signing many an autograph, taking many a picture, and putting in the time with these youngsters, Staten Island's coach took some exception and essentially, let me just get this man's name correctly, Bob Laterza accused Judge of ignoring his players when Judge was in the on-deck circle. Now, I take issue with that off the rip. That is a moment of concentration for the player, first and foremost. But personally, I think it's kind of taking a shot without justification because there's so much evidence that so many of these Yankees were participating and doing a lot of one-on-one time with his particular team. Aaron Judge took the high road and basically said, it's not about anything other than the kids. So he refused to say anything negative about the coach of this particular team. The New York Yankees released a statement, I'm paraphrasing it, but basically saying that this man can learn something from Aaron Judge by totally, putting forward work in the community and being kind. And I think the Yankees were disturbed that there wasn't a letter written and that he went immediately to the press. And the Yankees also offered to put this team up for a Yankee game. So, Aaron Boone comes to his players' defense and he said, Aaron Judge, in terms of a human off the field, is as good as it gets. And mind you, this is a former recipient of the Roberto Clemente Award. And for those of you who know, that is all about community service. Roberto Clemente lost his life, giving to others. So personally, I'm not saying it because he happens to be my favorite Yankee, but I think a lot of this is really unfounded BS. What else is burning on my mind going into the immediate week? Wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, to name a few. These are players that a lot of people going into their fantasy drafts are a little concerned about taking. And the best advice that I could give fantasy players is don't allow a holdout or a contract dispute divert you from taking some of the best players in the NFL. And with the exception of Le'Veon Bell, history has proven that even if a resolution isn't made, it is very unlikely that these guys are going to completely sit out. They might be traded, they meaning Ayuk. I think that the Jamar Chase situation will have a resolution. I think the CeeDee Lamb situation will also have a resolution. But I don't see a world where Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb are not playing with their teams. But I do want to say this, with the fluctuation of all these contracts, this is the new norm in the NFL where you're going to be seeing a lot of guys holding out. In Jamar Chase's situation, it's actually a very much new thing. This is a guy, I believe that's in year 4 of a 5-year deal because, the rookie deals usually go 5 years. And it's uncommon for someone to hold out that early. CeeDee Lamb, coming off the sensational season that he had, wants to be the highest paid, and I get it. You have a short time in this league to make your money. Last time that I remember such a notable player holding out in a big way. I'm not talking about Chris Jones. Chris Jones did the 1 week. He got paid. He was back week 2. I'm taking it back to the early 90s when Emmitt Smith held out and the Dallas Cowboys, who were defending Super Bowl champions, just completely looked lost. This was also an era where the running backs ruled the roost in the NFL. Offenses were built around running backs in that era of football. But I think Ayuk is still a 50-50 to get dealt. Lamb and Chase ain't going nowhere. People are overreacting that do these fantasy leagues. I'm telling you right now, I'm in 5 fantasy leagues. Draft the best players you can get. Do not be diverted for any reason other than a fear of somebody getting hurt, maybe. And this is my favorite time of the year, man. I love fantasy football. We got a lot of cool leagues. In Pop's Cheddar in the Sun League, which is named after my father, shout out John Olson, our commissioner, another big Packer fan. I won our championship 2 years ago. Last year, I lost in the finals. And this year, I don't have a first-round pick because in this particular draft, you can trade draft picks. But I was very thankful that I'm picking 10th. Because if I would have not drew the 10th pick, and if I would have been 1, 2, or 3, that would have been a hell of a time to wait. Not to mention that you're in a position where you miss out on a lot of talent. But we're going to be giving some fantasy tips around here in the very near future, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about our fantasy league because Idris, Zappi, and myself are all in that particular league. And as I said, I'm playing in 5 different leagues. Brett's in that league too. Shed's in that league. So shouts out John Olson. I'll be hanging out with him next weekend. We have 1 draft, and then the day after we have our personal league draft. So it's going to be a fun weekend. Fantasy football is a lot of fun because truth be told, it kind of could take the sting out of a crummy season. As you see the guys behind me, my beloved New York Football Giants. A lot of questions going into the year, and I do have to accept that there is a distinct possibility that it could be a long year. But thankfully, my Rangers, my Knicks, and my Yankees are all championship caliber right now. But, I must admit, life doesn't truly seem complete when the New York Football Giants aren't their best, and it has been a minute. But, like anything else, and I've always said this, I enjoy the journey of being a fan, because going through it sometimes is just as gratifying when you win. If everything was easy and things just came year in and year out, it wouldn't nearly be as much fun. But one thing I got to say, these guys have managed to win 1 in each of the last previous 4 decades. They're on the clock to win 1 in the next couple of years to keep that trend going. And we'll see, man. One thing I do know is the moves made next year and what have already happened are going to shape the future of both Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. And there is a very famous coach, Mr. Bill Belichick, who basically said that he wants to be back in the league next year. So it will be incredibly interesting to see where he goes. He has been linked to a few teams. One team that has been mentioned is, of course, the New York Giants because of his roots in New York. You can't count out him following in his teacher's footsteps and coaching the Dallas Cowboys. That is also a possibility. You can't rule him out for Jacksonville. There's a few teams for sure in the mix for the services of Bill Belichick, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out in the near future. To my video game heads, I must admit, playing Madden with the New York Giants is a lot more challenging, but it's forcing me to be a better player. I must admit that I was spoiled with having Saquon Barkley. Life without Saquon in that video game is not easy, but I am getting better now. And I'm a pretty good Madden player, so I take a lot of pride in that. Giants have the worst offense in the league in terms of the Madden. I'm not saying real life. I'm talking about Madden. Oh, and by the way, Malik Neighbors, even in that game, going to be a beast. Until next time, I am Richie. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Take care.